Hey, everyone. What do we got with us today? Look at the Bitcoin chart here while we get ready. Let me pull out the chat window here so I can see who is with us. All right, Josh. Happy to have everybody. So this is going to be a little bit of a kickoff live stream / me sharing some tips, and then mostly just looking at the charts, looking at the markets, what's going to happen this week, what are some potential trades to look at. So we'll look at that and some Q&A. Anything you guys want to talk about? Got Emmanuel, Robert. Right. Let's get a few more minutes. So if you have questions, I'm going to be watching the chat window here. So feel free to post them there. But if you can't for whatever reason, go ahead and throw them out on Slack on the Blitz Questions channel. So I'll be watching that as well. Bitcoin selling off a little bit here. Exciting times, man. I gotta tell you. So I was thinking scenario number 5 that I didn't even mention in the potential going into the fork scenarios. When you think about it, scenario number 5 is Bitcoin just really tanks going into the fork. I think that's probably one of the least likely ones. It could just probably go sideways, but hey, you never know. Could just have a big sell-off going into the fork. What nobody's expecting, right? That's how the markets tend to do it. What's the least expected path? And that's what we're going to do. All right, let me see how many people we got here. I'm just setting up the windows on my end. Hey, Gasper. I don't know if I pronounced that right. It's a cool name, though. All right, so we're getting some people joining here. We'll get going in another minute or two. Do I think 2x has the potential to become the winning BTC? I do. It has the potential if everybody can get on board, but then it won't be called 2x. It'll just be BTC, and that will be the new protocol. But I don't know. It's just so contentious right now. Just a lot of debate. It's kind of hard to say. Hey, Lisa, Derek. Yeah, B2X. So like Bitcoin Gold, that fork was not even really a fork, right? It was just an altcoin that was created from the Bitcoin chain that just became its own chain. And as expected, it wasn't as big of an issue because there was no division within the mining community. The devs were totally separate, right? So you weren't really stealing resources from Bitcoin in a way. Bitcoin Cash, for example, it did, right? There was this very political, which side of the camp are you going to be on? And they were trying to rally miners into their camp. And B2X is very similar, right? Where there is a true competition to the core Bitcoin chain and which one's going to win out, and the disagreement between the businesses that want it versus the developers. And there's just a lot more to it. And so this truly is a fork that could, cause some volatility in the markets. And that's why a lot of the exchanges are going to probably lock things down for a little bit to avoid any issues with replay attacks and with potential funds being lost or people taking advantage of the little chaos that might happen. So it's just one of those things where this truly is a fork to watch, and more from a technical perspective, really. And these things are just very technical, and I'm not the expert, so try to explain it to someone it's challenging for me in terms of how to prevent the whole replay attack and what the chains mean. And it's just it's going to be a fun fork to watch, though. I think personally, I think Bitcoin has had a nice run. I think we could go sideways to slightly up from here into the fork. And my guess is the alts are going to really start to pump before the fork. And we're seeing that today. A lot of that is just a factor of Bitcoin selling off. But I'm thinking we might see more of that going into the next week or so. A lot of volatility between now and then. That's for sure. So who else we got? We've got Tim, Mr. Cruz, Pavel. All right. Cool. So we've got enough folks joining here today. So I will go ahead and kick us off. And this will be recorded. This will be posted out on the channel. And so if you have the link that you used to dial into this, you can just use that same one and rewatch this or whatever, anybody who misses it today, they'll be able to go and watch it. And I'll have another one. I'm not sure if it'll be late today. It'll probably be tomorrow. I'm not sure yet. But I want to do a late night stream my time to catch some of the other time zones that are out there. So, all right. So first, let's talk some business on the Slack side, and then we'll start looking at the charts and answering questions. So on the Slack, if you're not familiar with Slack, there are mostly all public channels. And so everybody by default, when you were added, you could see like general and questions and reading and education and such. And so I definitely recommend you guys use those and post out there. Most everybody's on the group here in this private group, but there's still a few from the last group that are in the other channels. And so they would, I'm sure, more than happy to engage with you guys and to create that dialogue there. And so use those channels, post, just random questions, thoughts. I mean, I like to see your guys' charts and questions and debates and all that. Obviously, please refrain from selling or pumping or doing anything like that. Just kind of keep it clean. But, if you like ideas, if you're looking at charts that you're liking, throw them out there. And I'm always monitoring those channels as well. So I'll be active there as well. There's the Blitz private channel and then the Blitz questions private channel. And so just a friendly reminder, and I'll continue to remind everybody, and it's actually been really good, but just I'll continue to remind everybody, the Blitz channel is for me to post in. And so the reason we did that is Slack can get a little too noisy if you're getting notifications for every channel. And so I would recommend turning off the notifications except for the Blitz. And that way you'll just get things that I post if you're just tracking that. Or you can do no notifications at all. But if you just want to get my notifications, the Blitz one is the way to do that. And then everything else, you can post on the questions. Actually, let me pull the window open to show you guys. And so, on the Blitz, you can change notification preferences here. And if you haven't seen the welcome video, I talk about this a little bit. And then everything else, you can mute it, or you can change the way your notifications come across. And that'd be the easiest way to do it, is just mute all the other channels if it's easier for you to do that, or just leave these two active. But just leave the Blitz one open for me. The one exception would be you can post replies as a thread, and that doesn't notify anybody. So this is a good way to do it, and you can kind of keep the thread going that way. And so you can answer and post comments and questions on Blitz only if it's on a thread. Everything else, just throw it out in the questions. Now, as far as the questions channel, what I would recommend is let's try to limit this one to questions related to my posts in the other one. And so if you just have a chart you're looking at and you want my opinion on it, or you're seeing a trade, stuff like that, or you want to know how to do something on TradingView or Bittrex or anything like that, throw those out here just in the broad open questions channel or the general one, and I'll answer those too. So the questions here, ideally, just to kind of keep the conversation in sync a little bit, would be more questions related to posts or to updates or anything like that, if you're not using the thread over here. So I won't be too strict on that, but just a suggestion. And I think some of the other folks on our group would like that, just to keep it a little bit clean. And so if anybody has any other suggestions, feel free to let me know. I'm open to ideas. I do have a few of our quote unquote veterans from the last group that are helping me out with kind of moderating and reminding people to keep the Blitz channel free. So just we're just trying to help each other out and all that. And so if you see other people responding on my behalf, they have my authority. Let's just all be nice about it. So okay, that is out of the way. Any questions on that before we get going? Someone's asking if the live stream started. Yes, it did. Can't hear it. Hopefully you can hear it. So let's talk. We have some notes here. So we talked channels. We talked Slack tips here. Oh yeah. So if you want to post files or charts or references, if at all possible, post on there with links. So you'll notice whenever I post a chart, it's always with a link. So I tend to post it just as a link, so it keeps the space free and doesn't get too bogged down. Plus, it makes it easier for it to load on your end when you're looking at the charts, as opposed to me loading a file. If you don't have any other option, like say on the resources, you're sharing something, or on education, it's okay to post files if you want to post a PDF or something. Just keep it minimal. Don't post any really huge files or anything like that. But just a tip there. And if you don't know how to post chart links, it's pretty simple. Both TradingView, CoinGeo offer the same way. But if you go to the download the picture, image URL, whatever you have marked up at the time that this generates a little code, you can copy and paste this code into the Slack, and it'll post that chart there, and then we can open it that way. So let's look at Bitcoin. And yes, you will be able to rewatch this later. This is going to be stored out on YouTube just like any other video, but it's unlisted. So just using the link will get you there. If you have Slack to receive notifications from those channels, will you also get notified for replies in the thread? No. So like if you have Blitz and somebody posts a reply, I don't believe you get notified on that. Just the new posts. So here's what I was watching on Bitcoin, and I mentioned this, I believe it was Friday in my last video about, let me go to the daily chart, how extended Bitcoin was over the moving average on the daily chart. And so if you're not familiar, and most of you guys are pretty familiar with my style, but the 10 EMA is probably my most used moving average, and that's the 10 period exponential moving average. So on the daily chart, it's 10 days. On the 1 hour chart, it's 10 hours. And I tend to use that as a guide because when it's around it or above it, that tends to just confirm that the trend is up, right? Versus when it's below it, the trend is down. And it tends to act as a wall or a resistance point as well as a support point. I mean, you'd be surprised at how often this arbitrary moving average tends to hold. And then the other one I'll tend to use sometimes is the 30 as well. That's a little bit more long term. And when something's really moving, it kind of really doesn't matter. On a pullback or corrections, we tend to see it hold a little bit more often, and it really does vary by time frame. Like the 1 hour, I really don't use the 30 EMA. It's kind of non-significant there. On the 4 hour, it tends to be. We're seeing a pretty good sell-off on Bitcoin here, but so that's what I was looking at. So I was looking at how extended we were. So in the big picture, I was thinking a pullback to this 10 EMA on the daily chart is probably in the cards and was expected. And I think when I posted that video, we were like 15%, yeah, 15, 16% above that moving average at the time. And we're seeing that pullback. So it's happening. Hold on here. People are asking for the link to the live stream. Let me post that again. Can somebody go out on Slack and post for me the link that someone is asking about for the live stream here? So we're seeing that pullback from the highs. We're already off, what, 8-7%, and that's kind of what I was pointing out, that most likely would happen, or we'd go flat. But then I'm thinking we'd be limited to the 10% or so down range as this moving average catches up. And we want to be. That's going to be a key level to hold. And right now that's down to around 6,850, maybe 6,900. We saw that level hold a few days ago. So if we go back to the 4 hour chart, we saw this pullback happen and went to 7,000. And then just yesterday we had big support bar here that went down to almost 7,000. And then today we're basically right there. We've undercut it slightly, but so far we're holding. Now, if we look at the 1 hour chart, you can see it's pretty bearish, but we're starting to hit these little bit of extreme oversold conditions. So RSI is now down to the 20s, and I'm thinking we're going to see a little bit of a bounce here. You're starting to see volume come in, and typically that signifies some buyers stepping in here at these levels. And so if you're looking to buy the dips, ideally these are the levels you're wanting to put some orders in, right? So this kind of little range right now. So if you're not in Bitcoin and you're asking for what's my re-entry, I'd probably make your first buy here because this is going to at least bounce on the 1 hour chart, and on the 4 hour chart, the bounce is going to be interesting to see how high it gets, because this 10 EMA, when something starts to turn and the trend changes, this 10 EMA tends to be a little bit of a wall. And so we could see a bounce that takes us, to where the 10 EMA will come down to, and then you can do one of those things and then maybe undercut and just do this. Now, that's kind of worst case scenario if we go into a bearish phase, but I'm not expecting that at this point. I'm thinking we'll pull in a little bit, but there'll be some buying support along the way. The other alternative is buying the alts, right? So maybe you buy some Bitcoin here and then you start trading into the alts. And so as the story has been, and I think will continue, Bitcoin is going to impact the alts. So if Bitcoin has a big rally here that takes it back to 73 or 7,400, you might see some of these little rallies we're seeing in the alts fizzle out. And so the balance is always, will the bounce in the altcoin you're potentially picking up outweigh the pullback that you're seeing in Bitcoin, right? So just look at it from this perspective. If you had sold out of the alts at the or sold out of Bitcoin into an altcoin right at the top, if you called it perfectly at 75, 7,600, you'd be down on Bitcoin right now 7% or 8%. If your altcoin hasn't rallied more than 8%, then it wasn't worth it, right? It was kind of a net loss. And that's assuming you caught it perfectly, exact top, exact bottom. And no one ever does, right? So that's the other alternative. If you're looking at your account from a cash perspective or a fiat balance perspective, you have to factor that in, right? You have to say, how far down could Bitcoin go? If it's only 5, 6, 7%, the altcoins, will they rally and fizzle out? Will I lose 5 or 6 or 7% and get stopped out, or will I gain more, right? So that's kind of the risk reward, right? The opportunity cost that you got to keep in mind when doing those trades. So let's take Ethereum, for example. From the low, it's actually had a pretty decent little rally here. But again, that's assuming you would have switched out exactly there. And so it's pretty much offsetted the Bitcoin pullback almost exactly. Within 0.5%. So it's been a good hedge, but it's not outperformed. So you'd be flat here on this account if you would have traded Bitcoin out for Ethereum. So that's good, right? Because then you've made that little bit of gain, and then you've got to figure out, okay, do you switch back out here to Bitcoin, and does Ethereum pull back in? And so I'm thinking Ethereum is going to be one of those that benefit from Bitcoin coming in a little bit, but it's not going to be a huge gainer like some of the small alts, but it'll be a little bit more conservative. So, these are kind of the levels I'm watching, and this is a really good double bottom right here on this 4-hour chart. And so a clean double bottom is, you have the low, and then you have a deeper low here on the second low, and this one did have that little shakeout bar. So it's not a perfect double bottom. The first low is way down here on this big shakeout bar, but what I'm liking here is this divergence you're starting to see, right? You're starting to see this in a lot of the alts. You're starting to see the RSI start to head north, the MACD start to head north, and that's a good first sign that the lows are being put in. Now, we saw that happen back here going into the Bitcoin Gold fork. So this is the same scenario going into Bitcoin Gold fork, and obviously you had that one-day rally that just fizzled out and didn't hold. But this is a little bit more contained, a little bit more structured. So that's good. And so if you're not familiar with how to do measured moves on these double bottoms, the way they work is you take the reaction point, as they call it, so the middle, the W part, and you measure the neckline there down to the low of the second bottom or the deeper bottom, but ideally the second bottom. And then you take that and you move it up to the breakout point, and you say, if it breaks out, just a pure technical measurement, this is your profit target, right? And what I do is I use that, and then I say, does this point in the price correlate to any prior resistance point, any Fibonacci retracement point? Does it make sense that it would stop here? And so you can see here, looking at this chart, this would be the first obvious resistance point, right? This line back here, this point, which also correlates to this little consolidation here. And does that correlate to any moving average on the daily chart? Not really. Okay, sometimes that correlates to like a 10 EMA or a 30 EMA. And then let's do a fib real quick and see if that correlates to anything on the fib. So if we take it from the exact the body candle from that first reaction low, that's pretty close to the 0.68 actually. So let me zoom in on that on the 4-hour. So you can see here on the 4-hour chart, that'll take you to pretty close to that fib. So it's actually not a bad target. And so if we were assuming that that's a breakout, then we can see what's the measurement on that. And so we can say that would be a 9-10% rally from here. Not huge, not that big of a deal, but not bad either. And then your stop loss, let's say you take it on the breakout, your stop loss would be somewhere below this initial breakout point. 10 EMA at that point would be higher, so I'd use that. So maybe about 4 or 5% down. So the rule of thumb is using a 3-to-1 risk-reward ratio. So if your stop is 3%, then the minimum upside should be around 9%. And if your maximum upside is like 9 or 10%, try to use a smaller stop, right? So don't go like 5% stop for a 10% profit, because then that's like a small ratio. That's 2-to-1, and it's higher risk. 3-to-1 is ideal. So let's see what else. So feel free to throw out some questions here, guys. I'm just kind of rambling here as I go through these charts and see some patterns, but just kind of sharing my thought process. And so when I start posting charts, you'll have a little bit of an idea as to what I'm looking at here, right? When I throw these lines out there, I just tend to highlight, here's kind of resistance, support. When I'm looking at something, let's say I post this chart and I say, hey, potential double bottom on this. The line above is typically the neckline of the double bottom / the breakout point. So if you're looking to make a trade on it, that's what I would be looking for, is a breakout above that, and maybe you set your buy order just above it. And then when possible, I will also post a target profit range, or I'll post, I'll do something like this where I'll throw an arrow out there and I'll say, if it breaks out, here's what I'm looking at. So put a sell zone around 0.045. So this is just kind of an example, but that is generally how I will post the charts. And so that'll give you an idea as to how to read what I'm throwing out there. But sometimes I make assumptions that you guys are understanding my abbreviations and all that. And so please don't hesitate if you don't understand what I'm saying or what I posted, or if it needs clarification. Just throw a question out there. I'm happy to answer, and this is why you guys are here with me, to help learn and to see some of these trades. Which chart to use for a beginner trader? That's a good question. So my philosophy is, if you're new to trading and investing, you want to keep your losses as small as possible, and you want to gain as much experience as possible quickly while minimizing the impact, right? Because what new traders tend to do is they overdo it initially. They take too many aggressive positions. They don't employ stop losses. They go too heavy on one trade. And what ends up happening is you're still trying to figure out, the market sentiment, chart reading, measured moves, target profits, all that stuff. And so if you take too many big losses initially, it's going to kind of blow up your whole account. So what I would suggest is the 4-hour chart and then the 1-hour chart for newer traders. And mostly because on the 1-hour chart, you can do some more high frequency trading. You can do some quicker in and out, and your targets are going to be smaller, right? So your stop losses are going to be, just below the most recent consolidation. So you'll be like 1 or 2 or 4%, right? And on the upside, you might be looking at 7, 8% or something. But you're getting the practice. And that's the whole idea, is learning to adjust to reading the charts, reading the changes in momentum, and then these will apply on a broader scale, right? So like if you're looking at a small daily chart like this and you're thinking, okay, this is maybe a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders on the 1 hour chart, I'm going to buy it and it's going to break out. It'll probably rally to this point and then I'm going to sell there, and that's a small percent in and out, but it helps you read the chart. So you can say, downside target or downside loss here would be like 2%, upside target here, not much, probably not worth taking the trade, right? So that's the kind of thing you do. But you look at those, you just kind of get the practice. The thing is, when you're doing 1 hours, it's a lot more work, because you're looking at a lot of charts. The charts change fast, but it kind of gives you that exposure. But I would keep it small still. I would recommend like make your positions like 10% of your total trade portfolio until you start to get consistent, right? Like if 3 out of 10 trades are profitable for you, keep it small. Once you start getting better, 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10, 6 out of 10 trades, then at that point, you can start to bump up your trading position, right, to 15% or even 20%. Now, when you're swing trading, day trading, you're doing fewer trades, but you're waiting. You're a little bit more patient. You're kind of looking at the bigger picture of the setup. So like here, this is the 4 hour chart. This is a lot of time, especially in crypto world. How much time is this? There are 29 4-hour bars, and so that's 4 days and 20 hours, so almost a week, right? 5 days, and 5 days feels like forever to be watching a pattern potentially play out, right? But that's nice in the sense that you don't have to react as much or as quickly, so you can kind of take it a little bit slower, and when it finally breaks out, you can ride it for a couple of days, but those stops are a little wider at that point. So if you break out, you might have a 4, 5, or 6% stop or something like that. And so that's, that's kind of the way to look at it. And then on the daily, I definitely use daily, and that's more for some longer term holds, but I use daily for getting the macro sense of the trend, right? And so the trend, and it's cliche, the trend is your friend, but it's so important because it's so much easier, guys, when you can make trades. If you're going on the long end, right, you're trying to go bullish on a trade, and almost all of us are. Very few of us are shorting. But if you're going long, it's so much easier to do a long trade when the trend is like this, right? When the momentum is going up overall versus when the trend is like this, because here you're fighting the trend, and the rallies fizzle out. And so you want the trend to slowly start to change and start to get bullish. And those make for such better, higher probability trades than we're seeing right now. Right now, the trend is still down. Now it's starting to flatten out on some of these, but the trend overall for all the alts is still down. And it just makes for higher risk entries. And that's just the nature of it. And so the trend, your friend, that's kind of step one. Whenever I look at something, that's the first thing I do is the daily chart. What's the trend? What's the broad macro trend? Is the wind to my back, right? Is it going to help me, or am I going to be fighting it? If I see the bottoming happening out, that's good. But on the 1 hour chart, the trends change very often, right? You can see up, down, up, down, up, down. And so there's definitely room for trades here. They're just a lot more work, and you got to be a little bit more active, kind of watching the charts all the time. So let me read some of these questions here. Are the stop loss, stop gain set through the program you use? In other words, does the system auto buy, auto sell, or just notify you when it's hit a predetermined point? So if you're using this, you can tie this to your accounts through API. So like if you're on Bittrex, you can tie Coinigy or TradingView to that, and then you can do buys and sells, set alerts, and all that stuff straight out of this program. And so yeah, you can do that. You can do conditional orders. You can set up your buys and your stops. Not every platform, however, does a trailing stop, which I think is a big shame because trailing stops are so nice. And that's where you can just kind of ride the wave up, 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 up. And then when it does one of these, you get stopped out and you capture most of the move. So it's just really nice. But not everything does that right now. I know Bitfinex does. Trying to think who else. Binance. No, Binance doesn't even do stops. I think Kraken does trailing, or they used to, and they changed it. So that's kind of a bummer. You got to have to manually. And so, by the way, speaking of that, I just finished the money management video yesterday, and I've uploaded that on my end. So I'm going to be tying that to the technical analysis course page. And so if you have access to that, you'll be able to see those videos. And it's just a one video. I thought it was going to be longer, but I try to keep it short. So it turned out to be about an hour long. And in that, I cover just a lot of what I'm talking about now. Stop losses, position sizing, portfolio. I cover the spreadsheet that I showed in the welcome video. And so check that out when it's posted here. It'll probably be live later today. So just a heads up for you guys. So could I quickly recap how I calculate the stop loss level again? Yeah, so that's super important. So let's kind of look at some of the more recent trades we've done. So, or even, yeah, so Stratus, I think we were looking at Stratus here. And it's still coming back, which I'm liking. It's okay to take these shots at these. If you get stopped out, just kind of keep it tight for now because you don't want to overtrade. It's better off sometimes just waiting for these big patterns to start to play out. And I'll go into why right now in a little bit. But what is this? Stratus, Polo, this dollar. All right. And so what we were looking at was a potential breakout of, I believe it was this little bit of a wedge pattern here. And I'm trying to find it here. I had already deleted all of my markup on that one. I'm trying to find a good example. So what I do though is on the stop loss, there's two ways to do it. There's a straight stop loss percent. And so if you're looking at, I think it was this one. Sorry, I'm trying to think and talk at the same time. If you're looking at a straight stop loss percent, then you want to keep that relatively small, but you have to adjust to the coin. Like some coins are very tight. The action's plus or minus 1%, 2%, 3%. And then some coins, you'll look at the daily chart and it's like plus or minus 15% every day. And those are just really tough, right? Because that's more of a day trade, because if you put a normal tight stop, you're just going to get shaken out automatically. And so in this one, I believe we were trying to catch this breakout here, and it broke out and then it pulled back in and started to do a little bit of this. So what I would have done is if you got in here, I think it was like 4.2 or 4.3 is where I was getting in. But if you got in here, then my stop would have been just below this 10 EMA or this most recent consolidation, right? So you look for what was the most recent candle like before the breakout. So if you bought on this breakout, then your stop would be kind of these candles down here. And so that equates to, let's say you bought right here, then you're looking at a 4 or 5% stop. And so you always have to ask yourself, is it worth it, right? Am I willing to take a 5% loss on this trade if I take this trade here at this level? And so that will dictate where the entry point is. If the answer is no, that's too much risk, then you may look for a little bit more aggressive entry. You might say, I'm going to buy it a little bit closer, maybe anticipate the bounce and buy it at that 10 EMA. And then if you're wrong, you're down 2 or 3%, right? And so there's ways to do it where you just kind of buy the dips as opposed to chasing it. But if you catch the breakout, you got to be willing to give it that much. Otherwise, a normal pullback is going to take you out if you just have a 3 or 4 or 5% stop. And so you have to look for those levels. And that's what I tend to do is I tend to buy and look for these levels of pullback, or be willing to take the 5%, 6%, 7% loss if the upside on the breakout is very bullish, right? So if it's like a huge ascending triangle pattern and it looks like when this thing goes, it's going to go 15, 20% in no time, then that's okay. Take it, because then what happens is once you're in the green, you raise your stop at that point to at least 2% down or something, or break even. And so that's how I would calculate those. So let's look at some real examples today. Like if we took some of these trades here now, what will we be doing? Anybody have any charts you want to look at? Any potentials? I know I've seen some names being thrown out there today. Komodo. Have you guys seen Monero today? Monero. Look at that. Typical of the market, right? The big pump and then the big sell-off. It's just be careful out there, guys. Don't chase those big green candles. But look at that volume, though. Just wild. Bitcoin Cash. All right, we'll look at that one. But so Monero is one that I've been watching, and mostly from the USD chart. And I do watch both of the Bitcoin chart as well as the USD on, especially some of the bigger names, because some of the big traders will look at that from a fiat perspective. And so what I was looking at here, let me zoom out. So here's the Monero Bitcoin chart, right? Really nothing to go off of, no bases, no patterns. It's kind of just straight decline, big pump, straight decline, big pump, right? So there's not a whole lot to look at from a chart setup perspective. But if you look at the Monero USD chart, let me clear out this. What I've been watching was, one, the last couple of months I was watching this declining trend. And then it broke out, and I actually took a little entry here, but kind of fizzled out, so I closed that out. But then two was, look at this massive support line it's been putting in right around 84, 85 bucks. You know, and that support line goes back to the low on September 15. And so if you look at that from a fiat perspective, that's a huge support base. And so you have to pay attention to that. This would not show up on the Bitcoin chart at all, right? And so you got to pay attention to that, because clearly there's buyers stepping in whenever Monero gets below 84 or 83 bucks, and that's just a solid support line. And after a while, when you see this happening over and over again, there's a couple of scenarios that could have played out here, right? This could turn into a big descending triangle pattern that just breaks to the low side, or you have multiple touches to that support point there at 83, 84, and eventually the sellers get exhausted, and then you get this kind of a move where it breaks out. And so you got to pay attention to the USD chart on some of these, and most of them are the big ones, right? Monero, you know, the top 10, right? So if you go to the CoinMarketCap, right? Bitcoin Cash, you know, Neo. I look at both Bitcoin and the dollar for these, right? So obviously Ethereum, Litecoin, Dash. I'm looking at a big symmetrical triangle on Dash when it comes to the USD chart. You know, NEMS. You gotta pay attention to both. Some of the smaller coins, really the play there is, can I outperform Bitcoin? And generally, when the answer is yes, it's huge outperform. And so that's why I tend to lean to just Bitcoin chart for most of these. But the big dollars, you got to pay attention to the USD. And so Monero. So here's the play on Monero. So Monero has staged this nice little rally, but it's done it several times here in the past. And so right off the bat, to me, I'm always thinking, okay, I'm suspect, but you never write it off. And so one, you don't chase the big green candle, right? That's just rule number one. If you saw this breakout this morning and you were going, oh my God, Monero is just, and I was watching this real time, and it was just like, the bar was like literally growing as I was watching it. It was just like going up, going up, going up. And the volume was just insane. But you can't chase that, right? That's just high risk at this point. It's going parabolic on the 1 hour chart. You got to wait, but it doesn't mean you don't lose sight of it, because I love seeing this. When I see these big breakouts like this, that's an automatic goes on my watch list, because what I want to see happen next is a little bit of a pullback, pause, pullback, and maybe a little bit of a bull flag or an ascending triangle that just starts to form right around this 90s to 100 range. That's ideal, because then that gives you a secondary entry point, and those make some really good trades. And so that's what I'm looking for on Monero here. I'm going to watch this to see how it plays out over the next day or two. And on the daily chart, if we start to see like a little bit of a bull flag form or a little ascending triangle form here, that's going to be an entry potentially on Monero if it breaks out. So I like to see those big breakouts there. But if you take it here, I mean, we're talking stop loss and risk. What are you going to do with it here? I mean, if you take it here, you buy it at this point, let's say you pick it up at 97.5. I mean, where's your stop? I mean, if you got to be willing to give it all the way down to like this level, right? Or just pick some arbitrary number. And that's just really hard to do. Now, if you look at the 1 hour chart and the 30-minute, those are good ways to do it, because you can ride the the 10 EMA. Here's the 30-minute, right? So notice how it's kind of riding that moving average. That's another way to do it. So if you want to get it here, then you just kind of stop out below these recent lows, right? So that's a good aggressive entry, secondary entry. You can do that. You got to be willing to give it 2 or 3% tops and then get out of the way. These tend to bounce off the moving average when they're that strong. So keep that in mind. Like up here, you wouldn't want to buy it. But now that it's pulled back, this might not be a bad little secondary entry. Let me look at some of these other ones, and then I'll answer some of those questions. Bitcoin Cash. Crazy strong action on Bitcoin Cash. So the BTC, BCH flipping theory, it's hard to say. I mean, there's a compelling case when you hear the arguments as to why, and this was the original thoughts and the original vision. And the truth is, Bitcoin Cash has stuck around and has some pretty decent mining power behind it. And it's becoming less and less of a taboo coin to mine, right? People are, at the end of the day, the miners are going to be in it for a profit. And if Bitcoin is less profitable and Bitcoin Cash is for a while, they're going to switch over that way and then back and forth. From an institutional perspective, like investors, the hedge funds, I think they're going to stick with Bitcoin until Bitcoin Cash proves itself out. And that might not be for a while if Bitcoin Cash really starts to gain price-wise. So it's kind of hard to say. Honestly, I think Bitcoin itself just has the first mover advantage, the brand name. It's just going to be really hard to dethrone that. But Bitcoin Cash may not go away necessarily. It could stick around and be around and maybe be a big player for a while. So Bitcoin Cash here, let me zoom out a little bit, the 4-hour chart. So I've had this trend line that I've been maintaining, and you can see where it stopped. I mean, just hit that trend line perfectly, and it's bouncing now. But the question always is, okay, we've had several moves up. Is this a bounce and that's going to fizzle out, or is this the next rally up? So doing just a quick fib on this. Right now, this is telling me it's probably just a bounce, right? Because it's hitting that 0.78. Couldn't really close much above the 0.618. So a little bit of a bounce, but it's kind of flagging out here, which is not bad. It's going to be a lot of resistance here, though. These are the two areas that I was pointing out that I didn't really like. Had this big sell-off candle here, and then it rallied right back to it, almost to the penny, and then just sold off. And now it's bouncing, and the bounce hasn't had as much volume as we were seeing back here on this second leg up. So if it were me, I would, if you want to trade this one, I would wait at this point for more of an aggressive entry. So maybe another retest of the trend line. But if we look at the daily chart, I mean, this is solid on the daily chart. There is nothing to be bearish about on this daily chart. Volume is big, sell volume is little, volume is big, sell volume is little. And so that's good. Now, if we look at the RSI is not even that overbought, and it's actually very strong, right? RSI is now going into the 60s. MACD on the macro scale is moving up. So Bitcoin Cash from the daily chart is pretty good. And so, if you like it, I'd probably, my guess would be to pick a bounce here. And it's giving you a couple in the last day, just a little pullback to the 10 EMA. But I think the big test is going to be, if we form a little bit of a base or a little bit of a flag and then break above that, that's going to be the test here. Can we get above this little level that we had prior? But it's been nice. I mean, it's just crazy how strong it's been in the last couple of days. I mean, how much has this rallied off the lows? 80%. I mean, that's nice. Even from these little pullbacks here, you've had another 30, 40%. So can't complain about the Bitcoin Cash. Look at the 1-hour chart here. It's a nice little setup here on the 1-hour. So it's kind of had that rally, a little bit of a pullback. So if you like it, an aggressive entry here would be, a pop above, especially if we can close above. I hate to see these rally attempts that just fizzle out. They get right above that, but pop top above that would be my entry with a stop right around there at most, and maybe even right there, which is the moving average. And so let's say you get in on the top on the breakouts, then you're down 3 or 4% at that point. That'd probably be my max. If you give it there, you're going down 6%. And even just a retest of the old high, upside potential is 6 or 7% away from those most recent highs. So higher risk here at this point. I would probably wait, in my opinion. I mean, it could keep going. If it breaks out huge, I mean, it's going to be hard to catch it. But in my opinion, I'd wait on this one. EOS. How's EOS doing these days? Is it EOS? EOS? I've heard it pronounced different ways. So still consolidating. Had that big run up. I think that was a good profit taking day, and it so far has proven to be the case. So it's consolidating. I don't know. I'd rather see this round out here after a big run up like that. They tend to pause for longer than you expect. You're seeing Vertcoin do the same thing, right? So I'll look at that right now. But that was 100% in a week. So it's had a big run up. Let me see the daily chart though. Yeah. A lot of sellers showed up here at this point. So I would pause on EOS. I mean, it's pulling in. Just give it some time. It's it's right at that 10 EMA on the daily though. And so maybe this is the big support bar that starts to hold, but I would kind of wait for it to turn around first. Best case, what I'd like to see is these big rallies that go up 100% and then they turn into like a little bit of a pattern here. Those are awesome. I mean, those are just really powerful. And let me show you an example here. And this is going to help with like the FOMO, right? We see the pops off the bottom and there's always the, oh my God, I'm missing it. I'm missing the rally. But the reason you don't really care about that is because, actually, you know what's a good example is IOTA. Because if it's a true sustainable rally, it's going to have another leg up. And so you don't need to worry about missing that first initial leg. There'll be time to catch on it. And so here's IOTA, right? So this is IOTA after that first fork, or going into that first fork here. But IOTA had a huge rally off the lows, right? So it was a relatively new ICO chart, had been coming down and just really giving up a lot of the gains. And then it staged this massive rally off of the low. Look at the volume there. It was like 6 times average volume or something. But the move, just that one day, IOTA went up 55% and then paused, but it was up 47% on the day. So that's huge, right? I mean, anybody who was watching this would have thought, man, I missed it. I wish I would have gone on this move. But here's why it doesn't really matter, because if it's going to be a good longer term move, you put this on the watch list. You start to keep an eye on this, because look at what IOTA did over the next couple of weeks. It put in this beautiful little ascending pattern. And this is when I jumped on it, right? When it was starting to do this and it started to put this little wedge in here and the low started to hold. And that was my signal, right? When I was looking at that, and I actually got in on this bar. So I got in a little bit early, but I saw that big pop to the upside with the volume coming in, and I got on there. And then just look at what it did after that. I mean, it gave you a massive run up over the next 2 weeks. And so that's why it's kind of like, I don't really care if something goes up 60, 70, 80%. I don't really feel like I missed it, because if it's going to be a true move, I actually love those moves when they go up like that. I did that with Bcash just a couple of months ago. It had that massive pop from $230 up to 400, like in no time, a couple hours. And then it pulled back to 370 and started putting a little flag, and I jumped on that, and it ended up going all the way up to 700 or $800 that week. So that's a good sign of strength when you see those. So try not to FOMO and catch those moves, or don't feel like, oh man, I missed it, because the best case scenario is you get one of these flags or a little bit of a bull flag pullback, and then you can jump on them there. And so those, I love seeing that, because that's truly what you want. You want to buy into strength. When you see a big pop that doesn't fizzle out, I mean, you got to pay attention right there. That's like red alert. Versus this, right? You see this massive pop. I love it. And then it just fizzles out. So that's a good reason why you don't want to chase. Let me see some of the other ones here. Speaking of Komodo, somebody was asking about this. So since we're on the chart, let's take a look at it. So it is looking good. Actually, I've been watching this one for the last couple of weeks, and I thought it was done for a while, but it's almost putting in this little bit of a inverted head and shoulders. And I thought this was the breakout here, but it didn't break out. I mean, I was waiting for it. I saw this happen, but then just the breakout, the rally fizzled out, and that was all Bitcoin, right? That was the day that a few things tried to rally, and Bitcoin just made new highs. But here we are. We're seeing it rally again. So what I'd be looking for here is this resistance point that's right at right now. This little, it's more of a zone, right? It's kind of had this point here, this point here. If you can see a little bit of a pause or a little bit of a pullback here on the 4 hour, hasn't even had to be much, right? If it just gives you a little bit here, and it's, see the 10 EMA is riding up, but notice, let me show the RSI here. RSI was kind of hitting these higher levels, so it needs to cool off a little bit, but a little bit of a flat or a pause or a handle here, and if it starts to break above these highs, that might be a good entry, because then if you can get in there, your stop will be the low of that handle. That's ideal. You can give it a 3 or 4% downside. It's going to have to clear this resistance, but at least you'll be in, and if it does clear, I mean, even just to the top of that point is 8%, 9%, and if it clears that, then you can see a pretty decent move up on Komodo up to maybe these levels here, 17, 20% above. And if it's a real big breakout, one of those bottom pops off the lows, then it's going to be much higher. You know, something like this, right? If you get one of these moves, that's a huge move, but it's just hard to plan for those because there's nothing in the chart that tells you that's happening other than news and rumor. So I'm keeping an eye on this, but I don't have any open trades or anything like that. And if I see that little handle start to form on this chart, I'll post that out there for the group. Let's see what else we got here. So we've been going for almost an hour. We got quite a few people here now. Let me see. I'm looking at the questions here. And so, I mean, right now, Bitcoin is just until the fork, I'm thinking the place to be, but I'm starting to like the alts. Certainly the last week, it's been the place to be. In the last 3 or 4 weeks, it's been the place to be. Yeah, you'll be able to catch the replay on here for sure. But I'm thinking, be patient, guys, right? I know you're waiting for all the trades and all that, but the best trade right now is kind of buying the dips on Bitcoin, and it's been working out so far. Now, we might start finally reaching a point where it's due for a pause or time to settle down. And here's a little channel I was drawing, and I posted this yesterday. Since the lows, I mean, just look at this channel. Almost a perfect parallel channel on Bitcoin marching up through these lows. And it's had this 3 times. It's hit the top of this channel here, and most recently in the last couple of days. And if we maintain this channel going into the fork, the margin for what the price could do between now and then, I mean, we can come back down to maybe 65, 6,600 bucks and rally and be just fine. It could go higher before the fork, maybe as high as 83 or so before the fork, maybe 85, right? And so, or it could kind of do one of these and just bounce around in here going into that time frame. But just an amazing channel. I was looking at going, this is, I think it's going to hold until the fork. I really do. I think it's going to hold. I mean, obviously anything can happen, but I think if you get some pullbacks to these lows, you know, I mean, think about that. You can have 1, 2, 3, 4 days of correction this week. So let's say Bitcoin finally stages a down week. It might take you down to 6,700 or 6,600. And then we could just rally into the fork and maybe be back at 8. I mean, just, there's just so many scenarios, but because of this, I'm leaning Bitcoin still, right? I'm still bullish on Bitcoin. I'm always ready to adjust if needed, but I'm looking at that going, that's amazing. Now we look at this, right? We're always looking at the very near term view, and that's good for trading. But if you're kind of looking at what's going to happen over the next couple of weeks, it's a compelling case to be made. That's why I'm thinking you might want to look at buying some of the dips. So 7,000 is going to be the key level, I think, that we need to hold here near term. That's going to be, here's 64, 69.40. So between here and 7,000, that's going to be a good level of support to potentially buy some dips at. And we're right there. And if that doesn't hold, let's say you buy here and it doesn't hold and you go down to the low of this channel, that's another 7% down. So you got to ask yourself, are you willing to give Bitcoin that much room to the downside? I don't think we'd see that much room. I think we'd probably pause more like at 67, 68. But anything can happen. And 3% down if you buy here, it's really not that big of a deal. Unless you're trading like $1 million. Then it is a big deal. Let me see here. Civic was one I posted yesterday. So it was more of a watch, kind of looking at this pattern, thinking could have a little bit of a potential breakout. But this second leg up was the second leg of the double bottom I was looking for. It didn't really play out. It kind of paused, and now it's doing one of these. So really not a whole lot to do here yet. I'm just putting these channels out here because I'm starting to see a lot of these charts go sideways like that, which means they're starting to hold par with Bitcoin. They're starting to say no more downside. Look at this big volume on IOTA here today. So this is a nice little double bottom on IOTA, by the way. Let me take the volume out here to show you guys. So you can see this little double bottom here on the 4-hour chart. Might be hard to see that first wick there, and you see this here. So that's a nice little double bottom. The true breakout on this double bottom is going to be right around these levels. And so we're still a ways out from that. I mean, we could rally another 5, 6% before that hits. But that's not bad. So if you want to take an aggressive entry on potential double bottom here, then you buy it here, but then you give it a hard stop, 5% down or so. Because if this level fails, then it's going to invalidate this pattern. And so that's what I'd be looking at. The reason most people wait for the breakout on double bottoms is because the double bottom, if it doesn't work, could turn into a head and shoulders on a retest, right? So let's say it rallies, it doesn't hold, starts to pull back, but then it does one of these, right? And now you're looking at an inverted head and shoulder, which is even stronger of a pattern. And if you get a breakout at that level, then you're almost likely to see a strong upside move at that point. And if you get a breakout from this level on an inverted head and shoulder, then you'd be looking at 15-20% to the upside here. So not bad on the 4-hour chart. So that's IOTA. Ethereum Classic just been marching along. Man, I didn't take that trade. I was just kind of busy with putting some things together for the group and doing this, but that was the chart I posted on Saturday, late my time. And so far, just rallying up once it broke above that little bull flag, and we were up 28% at one point, 30%, pulling in now, but not bad. Not a bad little move on Ethereum Classic there. Kind of came out of nowhere, which is another reason why I said, right, like if you see these big rallies and you think, oh, I missed it, it's okay, right? Like this was a huge rally, right? You were up 23% in a few hours or a day or whatever, but then you look for these secondary entries, these pullbacks to the moving average, and then you get those in. You go down the list here real quick. So ARK is one I was looking at. Not quite a double bottom because this second low is a little bit higher, but it's kind of a good sign to see these ascending lows. Now, the thing with ascending lows, you got to be careful because a true ascending triangle is after a rally, right? So you want to see a big pop first and then an ascending triangle happen there. When it's off of a low, it could turn into more of a wedging pattern, and that tends to break to the downside. So you got to be a little careful with those. But nothing here yet. There's the ARK versus the dollar, but that's been holding up pretty nicely here. Very volatile though. Look at these long wicks, just almost impossible to trade those. Basic attention, we talk Bcash, Bitcoin, dip in a little bit. Everyone's panicking. Sell your Bitcoin. Civic, Dash. So here's the dollar chart that I've been watching, and it broke below that triangle, but there's certainly some argument to be made. Maybe we could adjust that to the downside a little bit here. But still something to watch, because what I'm watching is really more the upper trend. I'm looking for a break of that trend line that it's been, that declining trend line it's been in for a long time. Because if it starts to really pop above that, I'm going to start to pay attention. That might be one to jump on. Yeah, I'll take a look at CIS. Let's see here. Decred still potentially working a double bottom on the daily chart. And so somebody asked about my long-term portfolio, and I'll try to put a little chart together, and I'll share that with you guys. Just know it's mostly Bitcoin, but here in the last few days or so, maybe week, I've been starting to take some small positions into some of these, and Decred was one of them. It was more of a bottom play, potential double bottom, so I took a little bit here. But it's mostly Bitcoin and some Ethereum. You know, my second largest is probably Ethereum right now. But everything else is kind of more of a tiny spec position that I won't hesitate to, you know, if it's Decred starts to break down here, I'll just step aside and roll it back into Bitcoin. EOS, we talked. This might be a good little bull flag entry after that big run up it had. So if you like it, maybe look at it here with the low. You know, it's still a little bit wide, but if you bought it here, your low should be no more than, I mean, I would almost just use a hard percent, because I wouldn't give it 10% personally. It's just a tough call right here. I would probably wait on this one. We thought ETH Classic. Let me go to the 4-hour chart here. Here's Ethereum again, doing pretty good here the last couple of days, last couple of weeks, just kind of building this little channel. I'm liking this. What I'd like to see personally is Ethereum put in a little bit of an inverted head and shoulders here. This is a double bottom, but if it can have one more pullback, let's say on a Bitcoin rally here the next couple of days, that'd be nice to set up Ethereum for a pop. I almost wish I could put like the B2X flag on all of these charts so I can see just how far it would go. I'm sure there's a way to do it. I should find a way to, like, there should be a line on my chart. ETP, this is Metaverse, by the way, on Bitfinex, but man, look at that, just really rolling over. I'm going to do a fork live stream, by the way. So am I still liking NEO? I am liking NEO. The chart, though, it's broken support here recently, and it's tough. These are just some random names on my watch list, by the way. I'll take a look at some of those other names. Golem, nothing. What is this? IOTA, we just talked IOTA. IOTA dollar. I mean, overall, though, the trend is still, you can see it's still down, right? So you might get these little pops. That's why the 1-hour charts is, I'm doing more of those right now, and that's because of this. That's because we're in this macro bear trend on some of these alts. And so the only way to capitalize on trading is going to be some more shorter term stuff where you can catch these little pops, or, you know, if you see a little base, but it's just going to be tough right now. There goes Komodo. Look at that. Rallied right up to that line, starting to pull in a little bit here. Lisk. Yep. Let me zoom in a little bit on Lisk. Is this the low? Man, every time I think it's done, it's not. Litecoin versus Bitcoin, again, a nice little double bottom, very similar to Ethereum there, with the breakout being, you know, right above that 0.7 mark here. So I'd be looking for here, but not bad. Now versus the dollar, it's kind of held this longer term trend so far, but there's this downtrend that's in play right now and starting to come to a head here. So it's going to be interesting to see what Litecoin does over the next couple of days. See, Monaco is one I was watching. Man, just got smashed. Metal did too. Look at that. Oof. That was a classic sell the news. Bouncing a little bit here. I think it could be a double bottom, but if anything, it's going to be more of a dead cat bounce. And so I would, if I were trading this one, and I have been looking at it because I think it'd be a good bounce trade. This is kind of what I'm looking at. I'm looking at these potential fib levels. Let me throw that in the background so it doesn't, makes it easier to read here. But, you know, this could be a good bounce play. So you take it here. Don't give it more than 5 or 6% on the downside. below that most recent consolidation here. But if it breaks above this, what is that, 7.8 level, 7.9, most likely you're going to see a rally up to this 3.82 level. That's 30% from here. That's not bad. I doubt you'll see the 6.8 level just because you've got this big resistance down here. And but you could, but I would be taking profits going into this level, maybe max the 50% retracement, which would be right around here. But it's a high risk play. Let's be clear about that. It's a high risk play right now. But man, the thing with these though is they're just so volatile. They can move up quick and down quick. So you got to be watching those trades. So here's NEO again versus Bitcoin is putting in this little channel here, just like Ethereum, just like Litecoin, just like some of these where this is nice, right? We're starting to see Bitcoin pause a little bit here, and these are starting to go sideways, and it's kind of an early indication that the alts are saying no more. I'm kind of done going down with Bitcoin. But versus the dollar, had that crazy rally here a few weeks ago. Let me see. But here's the thing with NEO. I like NEO, but the first level to watch is this 4.3 level or so. That's going to be a huge resistance point just because that was such a big support level that it broke. I'll show you on the daily chart. I mean, it was a big support level down here, and it just formed the lows here before the big rally a few weeks back, and we started to break here, and then we just saw that breakdown. So the 10 EMA on the daily chart is still pointing down, and even a bounce, it could bounce right into that moving average and keep heading down. So the longer term NEO chart, it still looks bearish. And I'd like to see it kind of go flat here and then maybe rally up. That'll start to change the overall trend. Mise Go, same thing, right? We broke down, we continue to break these levels. Has these nice little rallies, but the macro chart again, right? It's well below the moving average. It could bounce here just fine, but is it going to get above this? Is the trend going to continue? That's why I'm such a fan of just taking your profits. So in this market, if you get those big crazy pops and you're on one of those, most of the time it's been just take profit. There's a few that have held, right, that are pulling back and rally again. We're seeing Ethereum Classic, we're seeing Bitcoin Cash, but most of the time it's been just take the profit. 10x again, another one I like, but man, the trend is bearish. You got to wait for it to pop or start moving the other direction here, and they will, guys. I mean, you'll be surprised. You'll get out of nowhere, you'll get this big rally that takes it up like 40% or something, and then it just kind of goes flat, and that may be the trend change that starts to go higher. Just got to be willing to wait those out. Quantum continues lower, hitting resistance there. I do not hold alts no matter what if they keep going down. I will give them, especially for my longer term portfolio, I'll give them a lot more room, especially if I'm in it early, right? Like I was for NEO or Mise Go, right? I mean, I was getting in down here when it was like $6 or $8, and it's like, that's okay. And I did sell, I probably sold a little too early because I was selling into the 30s, the 30 some dollar mark. But then, you know, when you start to see these big declines, I'd sold some here, then I started selling and actually bought some when it was here. I think it was $18. But yeah, I mean, if it starts to break down, I just go back into Bitcoin, especially if Bitcoin is rallying like it is. And if everything's bearish, then you just go into cash. But that hasn't really been the case lately. It's been mostly pick another coin, and that's usually been Bitcoin. Pivx is another one that's been pretty strong here the last couple of days, trying to put in a low. And just look at the volume here. This is a little bit of a climactic volume that I'm seeing here at the lows. So I'm paying attention to this one. Still declining below the 10 EMA on the daily, but it's trying here. Buy volume is starting to pick up here. There's a little bit of accumulation. So I don't think there's anything to do with it yet, but it's something I've been watching here. You can see the 1 hour chart a little all over the place here. These alts are selling off. Is Bitcoin rallying? No. Ooh, the alts are selling with Bitcoin. So far, it's holding this level, but what was the other one? We talked Pivx, Quantum. So on the 1 hour chart, Quantum is heading a nice little pop here, but if you look at the broader view, right, this is rallying right to that moving average and failing right there. So you don't jump on it here, but you start to pay attention because you could test that a couple times and then really pop above it. But this is a big red volume reversal here. Don't like to see that as the seller showing up big time. I am watching Bcash. I haven't been watching Bitcoin Gold, to be honest with you. I haven't even paid attention to it. Steam, nothing to do there, in my opinion. Stratus, another one I'm still watching. I think on the daily it had a big washout low. I think that was capitulation here. You can see that massive volume after many, many months of just down, 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 down. I think the sellers, the holders finally are giving up here. But, you know, it's still need that confirmation. But I'm watching this one. Stellar. So I had a little channel on my Stellar chart. Where is it? That it's finally breaking out of. It's like every time I looked at this chart, I had to extend this channel. Looks like it's finally rounding out of that channel. So maybe the downside on Stellar is done. Doesn't necessarily mean it's going to pop, but maybe it's done going down. So there's your low point on Stellar there. We talked Monero. Really like to see this one flag out here. There's Ripple trying to bounce a little bit. Maybe that's why Stellar is finally pausing. They tend to move a little bit in tandem here, but Ripple's a tough call, guys. I don't know. Zcash. See what the near-term chart looks like. It's pretty wild, all over the place there. Tough to play those because you get to whipsaw it out of those. Zen. We go back to Vert. So someone was asking me about Vert. That was more of a bounce play here. You can see it's kind of pulling in a little bit. I'm not in Vert. I think it was a sell here up at these levels, and so far that has proven to be the case. So nothing to do here, in my opinion. I'd wait for it. Waves is another one. I saw some massive volume here at these lows, some accumulation. So maybe there's they're done going down. And I'm liking this little chart here. Kind of had that big rally, but more of a higher low at this point. Nothing to do, but I think it's one to keep an eye on. So might set up a good entry somewhere here. Smaller volume name. Same with with NEM. It had that big pop here. And pulling right back into that little breakout zone. And so far it's holding. So not a bad little chart here. On the 4 hour chart, you can see a little easier. So had that big rally. Kind of holding this. 10 EMA is catching up. So NEM. Not bad on NEM here. So I'll be looking at this level. And if you want to get a little more aggressive on this one. It's kind of hard to see these wicks, the candle wicks at the top, but maybe something like that. So if you like these, or you can maybe take a trade here with a stop, just below this recent consolidation here. So below these two candles, that's how I would do that. I'd pick my stop somewhere along these lines. And so that's a good 3 or 4%, not that bad. Upside's decent. Even test that old candle high is 15%. All right, let me flip over here. And let's see here. So what were we looking at? Syscoin. Let me set up my chart here real quick. The 1 hour, 4 hour. Man, that's volatile. I know on the daily they had that big pump a few weeks back and kind of just fizzled out after that. Could be at a low point though. We might finally be there. There's some big volume coming in here at these lows. So potentially something to look at, but again, more of a high risk name. Just, I like the platform idea though. I think it'd be really cool to see something like this take off from the retail perspective, the whole platform there. But looking at the 1 hour chart, I mean, this is nice. It's not bad, especially considering that it just held this recent low. But this big old dump scares me. It kind of limits the upside if it does tend to move out here. That's still 37% up. So if you jump on SIS here, I wouldn't let it get that high. I'd probably start taking profits into this area here. If you can get that, if you can get the 30%, it'd be nice. What's Keybird? Forget the ticker on that one. Let's go here. Keybird. And see. You can tell there's a lower volume name, just the way these candles look on the 1 hour. Oh man, no signs of a low yet. I'd be waiting on this one. At least let the bottom kind of round out. That's what I like to do when I see charts like this. You're never going to catch the exact bottom, but let it kind of do one of these and then maybe a pullback and then start heading up. This is just super bearish personally. Or let it do one of those like big pops and then pull in a little bit and jump on it there. One here. Wow. I mean, so look at this. This is the daily chart. You would think it's an hourly chart by looking at the size of these bars, but just look at these bars. In one day, it moves 30%. I mean, that's a day trade one. That's it. There's nothing more to do with that than day trade these things, because it's impossible to hold these if you're going to maintain any sort of stop loss disciplines. Because I mean, so you buy it here on the breakout and the next day you're down 30%. It's just really tough. So you got to watch these almost constantly to be able to do anything with these. But if you're trading these, you ride the waves. So let me see Bitcoin Gold. I haven't even looked at that for a long time. Yeah, so it's having these rallies here, but nothing really. Maybe putting a little bit of a base with a handle here, but I don't know. I'm kind of skeptical on this one. I don't think it's going to go anywhere. There's $1. I say you sell it. All right, so let's see what else we got here. Any questions around like the Slack, the group? Any questions on my charts? Do they make sense? I think most of you guys, if you haven't already seen the welcome video, check that out. I try to answer some of those questions there. I'll talk about like my time zone, right? So if you're not aware, I'm in Arizona. In the US right now, I believe we are now back on Mountain Standard Time. Pretty active on Slack most of the day. Be checking it regularly, but obviously during the nights it's going to slow down a little bit. But I get to the questions as quickly as I can. If there's one that you really have a pressing question that I've missed for some reason, just feel free to let me know. Ping me. Remind me. Direct message me. So I'm here to help. I'm here to, as much as it is just showing my trades and showing what I'm liking right now or where I think the market's going, I'm here to help you guys learn how to do this and how to read the charts. And so if you got questions, just let me know. I really enjoy helping mentor and teach and do all that. So if you're liking a chart, if you're liking a setup, throw it out there. I mean, I can't catch them all, so throw them out there for the group, and if it makes sense, yeah, let's take some trades. Oh, metal was another one I was watching here. Again, oh, we talked metal though. More of a bounce play, but was strong. Let me see. Let me go back to the chat window here. Yeah, so the next thing to look at is the money management course, which you guys got a little bit of a preview on here just today. I'm going to be talking along a lot of the same already, but check that out. It's an hour long and broken up into different sections. So let me see. Civic, I did cover it, but we'll take a look at it real quick. So I'm liking Civic from this little channel that it's putting in. I was thinking this second leg up was going to create a double bottom and start rallying. Pulled back a little bit, but it's still looking good on this 4-hour chart. Now, if we look at the 1-hour chart, obviously Civic's a little bit wider here from a bar perspective. So if you buy something like Civic, minimum, you got to give it 4 to 5% on the stop losses. Otherwise, it's just going to shake you out. So I'm liking that, but it's looking good. It's really starting to settle out here. It's looking like this little channel wants to hold. Me personally, I think a breakout would be above that line, and that's 3% above. And then at that point, your stop would be just a 10 EMA or something lower here. But if you like it here, take it here and don't let it get much below this 37K level or 3,700 level. And that's kind of your max stop, in my opinion. If it breaks below this little trend that it's been putting in this channel, probably see another leg down. And the reason is, if you look at the daily chart, it's still very bearish, right? All it's doing is just going sideways after dropping big. The 10 EMA is declining and starting to catch up. So even if it does bounce, in the bigger scheme of things, that's going to be the level we got to clear first. And what could happen is it could just hit 10 EMA and then have another leg down. So you got to just be careful with those. Ooh, Bitcoin. 7,000. Might be a good buy level. Might be something to start picking up some Bitcoin. Or, whoa, what happened here? Look at this. No volume bars. That's weird. Let me go to another exchange here. No, that's the wrong one. Bitfinex. Some big volume selling coming in here. Wow. I don't have any Bcash right now. I have traded it from time to time. But as far as a long-term hold, I'm actually not holding any Bcash, surprisingly. So, yeah, Bitcoin. Let me see what this looks like on the indicators. Yeah. So if you're liking Bitcoin, you want to dip, you just hit 6,900. It's bouncing, and I think we're due for a bounce. A little bit oversold in the near term. If we go to 30 minutes, look at that big green bar here on the 30 minutes. Undercut it now, but some volume starting to come in here. RSI, however, on the 30 minute is still at 29, so it could go a little bit lower here. But we're right there. We're at this key level, so we're gonna want to see Bitcoin hold this level today, but it's already bouncing off the lows. But look at this declining 10 EMA on the 30 minute, just kind of been the wall that it's hitting on the way down. So we just started a new bar on the 30 minute and the 1 hour now. So we'll see what this next bar does. So this one's done. I'm betting bounce, probably a good area to look at it here with your stop. I mean, if you're buying it more for a longer term, this is a nice little pullback. We've already come back. What is that? From the highs, we've already gone down 9%. We're bouncing now. We're still down 7-8%. So some of you guys have pointed out, and Riley saw, I was watching this yesterday, the potential for a head and shoulders forming here, right? So we're seeing this. If you look at the left shoulder here, the head, you can say this is a shoulder, but I don't think that's the shoulder. Personally, I think that's an extension of the head. And I'm thinking what we could see is a bounce here and then the right shoulder potentially form. So if we bounce and we can't seem to get much above 7,400, that's what I'm looking for here. I'm thinking if that happens and we start to stall around 4,700 and really start to head south, I probably won't let it break that neckline. I'll get out ahead of time. So if it starts to head south in 71, 72, I'd probably get out at that point. That's assuming it didn't just go straight down here at this level, but if it bounces, that's the broader chart that I'm looking at there. And here on the 4-hour, how it would play out. So this is kind of the first leg. That's some big volume, though, on the 4-hour chart. Some big volume selling. Our side's a little extreme on the low, so I'm thinking we're going to pause here. But how high does it go? It's going to be interesting to watch this over the next day or so. So I was in a cash position or partial cash position on my Bitcoin here. So most likely I'm going to probably go in at this point. I sold some here at these levels just yesterday, actually. I'm going to probably pick that back up here at this level and see how it does. And if it starts to really break down, probably the 6,800 level is going to be my get out of the way stop. Not sure if it'll be 100% yet. Let me see. Well, 68, it's right at the 10 EMA on the daily. If it gets below that much, I'll probably sell half the position and then see if it can hold, maybe put a little wick and bounce back up. And if it doesn't, then I'll get out of the way. I can't imagine it'll go this far, but that 61, 6,200 level is going to be solid area of support. What's the 30 EMA on this chart? Yeah, it's by the time that happens, it'll pull up to about 61. So that'll correlate with that 30 EMA on the daily. So that's kind of my plan going in the next day or so. So I will pick up some Bitcoin when we're done with this call, and we'll see how it holds up today. Man, we might have to just do a live stream 24/7. Just have you guys available. That would be fun, actually, if I could kind of just have the stream going. Just chat real time. So that's probably going to be it for now, guys. I've been going about an hour and a half, and appreciate you guys joining me. I don't want to hold you up too much longer. So we'll move back onto the Slack, the 24-hour Node reality show. I would get delirious quick, I promise you. The show would quickly go south. Ratings would drop. Advertisers would flee. The lawsuits would start coming in. I'm kidding. But I do enjoy doing the live streams, actually. It's pretty fun. So, all right. Well, this is interesting action in the market here. So who's holding Bitcoin? I know a lot of you guys are not. I know a lot of you guys have been alts, all alts lately. See, here's the thing, though. Bitcoin's down 10%. And the question always has to be, are the alts going to rally more than 10% to offset this? And we're seeing some bounces, but as you notice, we just cycled through most of the charts. There's not a lot of huge rallies considering the magnitude of sell-off we're seeing here in Bitcoin here in the last couple of hours. So I don't know. It's kind of my clue that maybe just hold Bitcoin. The alts maybe are not quite ready yet. You're shorting it. All right. What are you shorting it on, by the way? What exchange? Someone just bought some on the dip. Just picked up for trading. All right. Got to keep in mind, though, in the last week, we're up like, we were up at one point 20-some% in a week. That's huge for Bitcoin. Below 7, getting worried. Yep. But this last candle better hold here. This 69, was that 68.97? It's a little oversold, starting to reach those levels on the 1 hour. Let me see here on the Bitfinex. What happened here with this no volume on Bitfinex? Did they pause it or something? Platform go down for a few hours? It's crazy. So you can see on Bitfinex, these are the levels I'm watching. So it's not breached that level on Bitfinex. Holding to 8K. We might get it. We might to get it. Oh, you're on BitMEX? Okay. Posted Twitter that note is buying Bitcoin, so everybody will jump on it. No, here's what happens. When I post that I'm going to buy something, it just crashes. So if I went on Twitter right now and said, guys, I'm freaking out, I'm selling Bitcoin, we'd probably have 8K by lunchtime. Well, it is lunchtime. We'd have 8K by dinner time. Yeah, but I mean, no doubt that's a big volume bar to the downside. I'm thinking a bounce, but then after the bounce, that's what really matters. And so we saw it back here where we had a real similar situation. Bitcoin had a big run. This was when we were, that 6K level. And then we saw the same thing happen here. We saw that big 4-hour drop, similar to what we're seeing now. I noticed we had this big bounce, but then it hit the wall and then had another leg down that took it, another several percent down. So this is the scenario that I'm thinking might happen here, right? We've seen this bounce. I'm thinking a bounce right now, but how far does that bounce get? And then do we see another rollover, second leg down? So that's kind of what I'm watching out for. We'll see here. We're at a key level. Critical point to be watching this one. Might have to just make a buy here. Let me see, do I have any orders out there right now? No open orders. I must have got filled. I had an order earlier last night. Yeah, I did. So it looks like I got filled just below 7,100 on an order earlier. A small percent of my 25, but I'm going to probably just go in now and pick up the rest. Why not, right? Why not? Just pick up some Bitcoin here. All right, so on Bittrex, it's at 69.40. That's USD Tether. So it's interesting to see how these all lag. But all right, let's pick a little up here. It's done. So I'll put a stop loss in at 6,800. I'm going to watch it. I'm going to probably put in a partial stop loss, meaning it'll just be an automatic sell for me if it happens, and then the rest will kind of just be me watching it. Just because this is happening kind of during my daytime, I can sit here and watch it, and something happens, and I can react relatively quickly. Versus if this was happening like at midnight and I was wanting to go to sleep, then I would certainly just do a hard stop or something. So if you're going to go to sleep, the level I'm looking at right now is probably this low here around 69 is the level you don't want to watch it break, and then below that, not much below 68. So maybe 67, 80 or something. And that's only a few percent lower here. So it's certainly possible, but that's only another 2.5%, 3% down. If it starts to get much below that, I'm going to step aside. And I mean, that's going to be the 10 EMA though on the daily chart, which is why I'm using that level, right? That's this rising 10 EMA that would just be a normal pullback. And that's kind of what I've been saying over the last couple of days is we can see a normal pullback. but that's 10% from the highs or 15%. So, you got to decide if you're willing to live through that or sell it closer to the top and then buy it here. So if you're shorting, that's the level I'm watching here. I'd be really careful if it starts to bounce here. You might want to put your stops in place, right? Personally, I would not be shorting this. This is not a bearish trend yet, and you're kind of just guessing that this is the exact top, and you might be right, but I'm just, there's no confirmation of that yet. So, will you still follow that plan? Sorry, what's the question? Would I follow the plan if I'm missing out on the fork? Yeah, absolutely. So the fork is nice, but to me, it's secondary, because we might have a futures market and there might be some projected value of the new coin, but the reality is we don't know what's going to happen post fork. Maybe there's consensus and one of the chains just die off and everybody says this is the new Bitcoin and the new coins are kind of worthless. Or maybe 80% of the market says, no, this is Bitcoin and everything else, it's going to be like maybe that Bitcoin Cash initially where it just drops to a couple $100, right? And so it might not be worth it to hold on to Bitcoin to get that extra coin and suffer a 15-20% loss on Bitcoin if that new coin is going to be worth 10% of Bitcoin, right? It's a net loss. And so that's secondary for me. I would not hold Bitcoin purely for the coins, right? Just because I think it's going to be the free coin. So that's what I'd be doing. I think we're going to bounce into the fork, and I think it'll kind of maybe go sideways here, but anything can happen. If Bitcoin just really starts to tank here, fork or no fork, I mean, worst case, what I do is, depending on where Bitcoin was, let's say it just really crashes here and starts to settle out, and we're maybe 2 days out from the fork, I might buy some then, thinking the downside risk is low because it's already had a big pullback. I might buy some then at that point, but it's that old saying, right? I'd rather be out of the markets wishing I was in than in the markets wishing I was out. And it's true. For trading, CoinGeek's pretty good. People like TradingView. Some people say TradingView is a lot more real time and reactive. So I would say try them both. Both of them offer you a free trial, 30-day trial. So just give them a shot. From a charting perspective, they're basically the same. I mean, they're identical, the buttons and the way the charts and all that. So from that perspective, it's the same. But I use both. Just, there's alerts and you can do messages and notes, and you can send yourself notes when something breaks a certain price and all that. And that's how I do it. That's how I keep up. So when I do my market scans, my routine, I'll go through the charts, and when I start to see setups that I like, I'll put some alerts in place real time that just notify me when something's going to happen or something's going to break down or break out, and that'll get me in time, even if I don't have a conditional order in place, just to let me know when something's happening. So here's Ethereum continuing to rise on the Bitcoin pullback. So money's liking Ethereum right now, stepping in, starting to get a little extended here, right? We're starting to hit that 80 on the 1 hour chart. So this leads me to believe, okay, Bitcoin's going to start to bounce here a little bit. We'll see how far back these alts go. Let's see, Litecoin, same thing, starting to edge out. But here's the thing, right? It's taken RSI level all the way up just to the breakout point. So the buyers are kind of exhausted at this point. So even if we do break out, I mean, the upside here is going to be real limited. It's not going to just go parabolic, right? So you get into a little bit of a pullback first. What if it goes below 5,000 or 4,000 or 1,000? Well, that's why you put stops in place. You can buy it here, but don't, you got to give it some absolute low. Don't be crazy and ride the wave all the way down. if it actually drops that far. So it's 69.30 on Bittrex, still dropping a little bit here. So far, the low has been around 69.30. It's bouncing 69.50. So who knows? We'll see. I think this is a good near-term low. Maybe. Maybe. Let's go back to Bitcoin here. I was about to wrap this up, but now Bitcoin's getting exciting. Might have to just stay on for a little bit longer. So the 1 hour chart, so the last hour we saw that was the V low. But yeah, on the RSI though, I mean, 4 hour could still go lower. Could certainly still go lower. It's only at 40 right now. We could see the big panic. Everyone that's been in this thing from 5,000, 6,000 saw it hit 7,600 this weekend, and they could just say, uh-oh, we're below 7 now, which is not a good thing. We don't want to be below 7 for much. All right. Arizona's Mountain Standard Time. Not always. We're one of those weird states that don't change time zones. So we were Pacific Standard up until just recently. Power Ledger. It is hyped, but I have not done enough research on it to know, to give you an educated opinion on it right now. So I don't know if I would like it or would I buy it here or not. Yeah, on Coinagate you can put stop losses and sell targets at the same time. Yes. So you guys are asking, what's my hard stop right here? The daily chart is what I'm looking at, and I'm looking at the 10 EMA. It's going to kind of be my first. The problem with that is we're going to be already, off the RSI, so it could dip below it a little bit and then rally. So that's why I'm saying I'm going to do a partial at that level if it starts to get below. So maybe 67.60 or 67.50. That's only, where are we at here? It's about 3.25% below current levels. And if it looks like it's not going to stop there, then I'll close out the rest here and get back in on a bounce. So that's what I'm looking at right now. Let me see here. I'm reading the notes here. Sorry if I'm quiet, guys. Syscoin is putting in a bit of a bull flag on the hourly. Could it break the next resistance of 3? Let me go back to Sys. One hour. Yeah, it's a little bit of a bull flag. It's not bad here. Very short term though. So if you like it here, pick it up with the stop probably slightly below these most recent candles here. So, that's tight, a couple percent. At most, I'd give it below that moving average. Looks like it might want to break out here. If it does, the key resistance here, though, is going to be this multiple levels over the last couple of days right there. And we're basically there. And then the next level above that is going to be this thing right here. And so let's see what that measures out to. If you get it here, next level up is just 1.5% away. That's nothing. It could just blow right through that. And then the real key test is going to be this right around just above 3,000. So yeah, I could get above 3 and then go up to this level here and test it. If it gets above that, then it's kind of an open field at that point, and anywhere in here could be the next move. So not a bad trade. Would not be against getting some sys here. Got to keep a tight leash on it. Come on, Bitcoin. People need to go to sleep. They don't want to see Bitcoin fall down further. Worst case, you just go into cash, you sleep tight, wake up the next day and buy it back. Put some stops in place or something. All right, guys. Well, I think that's going to be it for now. I'll go ahead and wrap it up. Appreciate everybody joining. My guess is tomorrow, late tomorrow is when I'll do the next one and make it a late evening to catch some of the other folks, the different time zones, and make it as spread out as possible for everyone to join in during the real-time live and ask questions and such. But at the end of the day, just throw it out on Slack if you've got questions and whatnot, and keep you guys updated as much as I can. Metal. Yeah, I think we talked metal head and shoulders, inverted head and shoulders. I mean, on the 4 hour of the daily, it's not really there. It's just kind of more of a pattern, but it's not a bad play here. It's bouncing right into the resistance, but I'd like metal here. I think more of a bounce plays. I covered at the very beginning and potential target, so check that out. Okay, cool. Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.